Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ann. I think we're ready.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. 2 weeks ago, John Gray spoke of the undimensional presence, which we call Source. We also refer to Source as the focus of spirit or the true tone. This tone, as John pointed out, has been sounding eternally, but at this time on Earth is sounding unheard by most human beings. Like sound which cannot be heard in an airless vacuum, human beings in their deafened state lack the essential medium necessary to hear the tone. This vacuum depicts the absence of mankind, separated from wholeness, isolated from spirit. Man, in its whole state, is designed to provide the connecting substance between spirit and the earth, and to express true spirit on earth. As John said, man was created as the apex of creation to express the tone on earth and be the crowning presence. In fact, man's presence on earth is an extension of spirit, an expression of spirit whose nature is love. In reality, we would be conscious that we are love, living on the planet. That's who we are. In our gatherings, we speak about spiritual substance, pneumoplasm, fine substance. I'm sure all of us have an idea of what that means to us. We also say that this substance connects us, the tone, to our being state. Or said differently, it is the medium by which we hear the tone. When it really comes to point, this medium is the expression of love. When we love source of love, love substance is created. And in that atmosphere, we clearly feel and express the tone of love. When we express this crowning spirit, we then know who we are. We realize that in truth, we are that spirit. We are love in human form. I think we all have had an experience in our living of what it's like to be in the atmosphere of love. When people are in love in a human way, they walk around in a cloud of loving light that is almost perceptible physically. And the person themselves definitely feels that atmosphere. And when that sort of atmosphere surrounds us, we more readily connect to the actual source of love, however you might describe that. But in truth, it's a spirit, the crowning spirit. The term fine substance is very accurate. The tone, as its name infers, is fine vibration. It's an invisible spirit. Obviously, the means by which man is able to pick up such vibration would also have to be of fine substance. John mentioned that there are gradations of spiritual substance, from the coarsest to the finest. Well, the tone also has immense variety. The tone actually has immense potential resting in it that is available, eternally sounding, available for man in the right atmosphere of love to be able to discern. and to express. It's been always available, and man has not been there to receive it. So man, knowing that he rightly should have power, sensing that he does not have the power of love, tries to manufacture that power in manipulative ways on the planet and all around. But that power is stolen. And it's not sustainable because it's not being fueled by the source of love. And so man's manipulations will never be sustainable because they do not have the power of love in them. And as well, the individual passes away when the power source is not flooding through the being, which is rightly what should be happening. If that power and the design that is inherent in the tone were being accessed by humans, our stewardship on the planet would be based in love. And you can imagine how that would be very different. Man would indeed be at the apex of the crowning creation, crowning the creation. Many don't hear the tone, and we have to admit that we don't hear the tone all the time. It's good to note that you don't have to be physically hearing sound in order to hear the tone. And that's because tone is a spirit. In fact, there are those who do not hear physical sound and yet are hearing the tone very vividly. Helen Keller is an example of this when she was alive. She was blind, deaf, and couldn't speak, but she heard the tone vividly. Here's a quote from Helen Keller. "I believe that God is in me, as the sun is in the color and the fragrance of a flower, the light in my darkness, the voice in my silence." However, tone is powerfully conveyed by sound, notably by the human voice. And of course, another variety of expression of the tone is that it is written in words, which is really another human voice speaking. We have ancient records who have blessed mankind greatly because the tone, love, life was expressed in words. It's an important way we communicate to one another, either by the spoken word or the written word. Spirit speaks, the word is expressed. As humans, we have an ability to express life in an immense range of activities. We know this. And we know that certain activities allow for a finer generation of substance. Just to roughly describe this, in the morning, a person might go out into his garden and dig a hole. Nothing against digging holes. In fact, a person who is moving in the current and who is aware that everything that is done is spiritual expression, being a spirit himself, as we really truly are, could dig a hole with great radiance. But let's just say at this point, he's digging a hole. And then maybe later in the day, he might go and pick up a violin and play an ecstatic piece of music. And we can see that playing a violin would lend to the generation of a particular fineness of tone, of atmosphere that would more readily access the finer levels that we are actually built to receive of the tone. So we might talk about tone in lofty words like how it's dimensionalist spirit entering into the dimensional realms through us as humans. But actually, it's very familiar. We know it very well because we're alive. Life is the tone. And we all know very well expressing light. We, as the tone expressing, live. We animate our bodies, etc. So we express dimensional spirit all the time. Very easy to do. The name of our new website is going to be called The Tone of Life. The phrase of life denotes that life or living is intrinsic to the tone. It's the way the tone is known by all living things. And as John said, mankind is designed to be conscious of itself at the apex of the tone's expression on earth. It's expressed in our living. So tone of life is a real name. It's actually the only name for tone because it is the tone of life as far as we humans are concerned. Since living is integral to the tone, we could this morning think about the various ways that we express the tone in our day-to-day living. To give you an introduction to this little exercise, I'd like to read to you a passage from Jean Hammond's book entitled Vistas from My Voyage. Her outer movements and those of her accompanist were specific. Every hand movement, every glance, the nanosecond of every pause, every step on and off the stage, each little nod and every word spoken to the audience meant something. There was no tension, just perfect flow. I could see that the audience was very receptive, knowing that professionals were being encountered, and there was no question as to whether or not they would get to a note. This assurance produced a collective relaxation in the listeners, allowing them to be free, to become aware of deeper levels in the performance. The opportunity opened to listen to something else, to spirit being conveyed, and to hear sound coming from a level above the outer presentation. There's a lot in this passage to note. There's the obvious perception by the writer, Jean, of the fine tone being witnessed. And of course, there was that resonant substance in Jean's being. And with that fine substance, Jean was able to perceive the receptivity of the audience. She could feel what was going on in the room. She had substance, a live substance, particularly attuned to musical expression, but to the tone, to love. And she was able to pick that up in the room. And this is an illustration of another mechanism that we all have, which allows us to hear the tone, and that is the subconscious aspects of our minds. The subconscious part of us is picking up myriad information in the tone. And in a way, you could say it's stored in the subconscious. And we know that when, for instance, we're in a room having a lively conversation with friends about a topic that we're all interested in, and the atmosphere begins to pick up, ideas start to flow, and there's a palatable atmosphere of, you might say, the spirit of truth, the true design starting to be explored amongst the people. And what often happens is someone might come up with an original idea that they had literally never consciously thought of before. And this could very well be something that has been stored in the subconscious of the tone, waiting to be brought forth in a conscious way. So those are interesting thoughts to ponder. And so I would propose that with Jean's present in that musical hall, she was picking up many, subconsciously, many messages from the people in the hall. And as well, because of Jean's stature and presence, I would say that she was emanating considerable substance in that hall herself. So it's a great story coming from her book. Love is the essential spirit that is conveyed by the tone. Love is all is love. The Beatles said it. We all know it. When it really comes down to it, love is what we love. Other forms of spirit are really differentiations of that one great spirit, love. Love is one of the most powerful qualities of character we can express. Love unifies, love opens hearts, it touches all aspects of living. If you think about it, everyone is expressing love all the time. However, the question is, what is being loved? Love belongs to the source of love. It's not something we can steal, as we discussed before. The unaligned expression of love in the human experience is a constant struggle, and it's the stuff of movies, songs, and most lives. The opposite of love is hate, and hateful expression, as we know, covers the planet. But for those who are attuned to the invisible spirit of love, they know something of the pure radiance of love, which is true source of all. If we express love appropriate to the circumstance, we introduce a transforming power into situations that are disarming the hearts of those around us. Examples are too many. How do I love thee? Let's not count the ways, but there are many. We are love. We know the source of love as we resonate at the upper ranges of vibration of expression. I love the words of a hymn that some of us have sung. It's entitled For Love Thou Art. Music by Bach. For love thou art, in thee we dwell, and thou in us, Emmanuel. There's a lot said in those short words. Protecting love as it finds expression in the dimensional is a responsibility we all have. It takes courage, it takes wisdom, as we learn to keep safe what are the things of the divine are emerging in us and around us. Creation of a home, of course, is a prime example of protecting the divine. And mothers and parents and everyone knows that. Sanctified spaces, environments where the substance is purified and filled with love is a very powerful expression of the tone on earth. Other people are affected by our own homes because we enter our worlds out of the atmosphere of our homes. I don't have to elaborate on that. Care and thoughtfulness are required wherever the process of awakening to the tone is occurring around us. You might say that such care is part of the ethics of the tone. Learning how to meditate and be still are necessary in order to silence the restless and distracted mind, in order to allow the tone to enter one's consciousness. Learning what to say and when to be silent are signs of spiritual maturity that we can bring. Protecting what is precious substance of the tone. Stillness allows us to sense what is required in a variety of situations we meet. Again, tuning into the design inherent in the tone. It becomes clear what is the thing to do. But we have to have that space. We have to have that lack of distracted mind present. The mind has to be turned to the source of love. And when that current starts to operate, it actually outpowers and pushes aside any attention to what is not love, what is not of love. It fades away. Here's a quote from a French philosopher, Simone Weil. Grace fills empty spaces, but it can only enter where there is a voice to receive it. And it is grace itself that makes this void. Respect for life is given lip service in most cultures. The taking of another's life is regarded as the greatest crime. And yet life is squandered to an incredible degree. Death is actually the spirit that controls most of the planet. Living a life with the qualities of vitality and purpose satisfies a void in the world. Continual thankfulness for life is the antidote to this identification with what's passing away, what is not fueled by the true source. Living our lives with this spirit foremost is the greatest form of service in these days of intensity, lives of life and love for life. Many are not feeling that. And so to exemplify the tone being expressed by us, by those who feel that like vitality coming through them of the tone, blesses immensely. You know those people in your life. Oh, we need to be them. We are allowing life to live through our expression. From the stance of spiritual dependability, everything that comes to us has arrived to be uplifted in our consciousness or by our consciousness. In these times of confusion, sanctifying all that we encounter in the holy place of our being is service unparalleled. The wisdom of carrying out this lifting up is a valued quality of character. It is only effective, of course, when carried out by the clarity of our own purified hearts. Blessing, another spirit that we can express in our day-to-day living. Blessing our worlds is a natural outcome of spiritual understanding and stature. The pall of judgment is everywhere and is dealt with first in one's own heart. Judgment dissipates fine substance immediately. It's doing it all the time. Removing judgment as responsibly as one can in one's heart and expressing a blessing, a spirit of blessing, is a quality of character that has been highlighted in the world by some high-profile figures. And it's interesting that such figures are counted as extraordinary, maybe because there's not a lot of them around. One such person that everyone has heard of is Mother Teresa. She was one such figure who brought the spirit of blessing to great numbers of people. And she said, "One thing I ask of you, never be afraid of giving. There is a deep joy in giving, since what we receive is much more than we give." Focused attention is a quality of character that expresses the tone. A single-eyed attention is required to stay centered in this world in the midst of all its distractions. And modeling this quality has a very penetrating effect in those with whom we spend time. They notice somebody who's actually centered and focused on something that's higher, and presumably we're talking about focusing on what is highest. the source of love. When we value loving the source of love by providing undeviating attention to whatever is noble and fine, you will find a motion, an upward motion happening as there's a movement of substance, sometimes unconsciously by people, in an upward draft towards its source, the source of love. Creating a new earth is another spirit. We all would love to create our own earths. Political and social endeavors are examples of attempting to bring about a change of earth. Mostly they fail. But individually, we can be effective in changing our own earth, lightening our own bodies into an ascending direction. Matters of health and diet and such things come to mind. One man whom I really admire in his work in creating a new earth was an Indian teacher from India who came to the States and taught to thousands and thousands of people. But before he did that, he spent a lifetime of meditation, worship, devotion, chant, a life totally committed to love and to spirit. And in descriptions of his life, he literally changed the molecules in his body. He created a new earth. And he brought that example to America. His name was Paramahansa Yogananda. And he did so by teaching all across the States until his death in 1952. This is an example of an individual and in a pattern of devotional study who brought fine vibration to the United States. And I would propose that the fine vibration that he generated actually assisted in the work that we have found ourselves doing now. Here's a transcendent quote by Yogananda. "Come, spirit, come with the glory of the dawn. Come with the vitality of the sun. Come through the portals of our silence. We are what we express." Many of us have heard this in what we refer to as our training. And yes, there was training involved, training of our capacities. But within a very protected and substantial environment focused on this process of awakening, what endured was not concept-based behavior, but taking advantage of life's opportunities in each moment by expressing the qualities of the tone oneself. That was what was required then, and that is what is required now. And those are distinct decisions that we make moment by moment. The experience, of course, is fullest when we meet those who represent these spirits. It is truly fulfilling to meet those who do so. But of course, the requirement is to be that representative oneself. We know these qualities are who we are, these qualities of character. And times like this and this hour are opportunities to articulate what we know. So I'll turn this now over to our friend Sanford.